All right, everyone, this is the regular meeting of the Jersey City HPC on Monday, April 24th. We're just going to give the attendees a minute to populate. All right. 2 seconds. I think we're pretty good on attendees. All right, Brian, you want to call the meeting to order?
Yeah, so it's 6:36 p.m. I'm calling this regularly scheduled meeting of the Jersey City Historic Preservation Commission to order.
All right, please be advised that in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the notice of the time, date, and place of this regularly scheduled Historic Preservation Commission meeting was sent to the Jersey Journal, the Jersey City Reporter, and Ellis Basilito on Thursday, April 20th. Same notice was sent to the city clerk for posting on the bulletin board outside of the clerk's office in City Hall and on the city's website. I have proof of this notice here in evidence. Bridget, if you wouldn't mind marking this as B1.
B1 in evidence for tonight.
Thank you. We'll move to a roll call attendance. Commissioner Amatuzza,
Here.
Commissioner Griga,
Here.
Commissioner Gucciardo,
Here.
Commissioner Gunther,
Here.
Commissioner Lewis,
Here.
Commissioner Gordon,
Present.
Commissioner Sakong is absent, Commissioner Cronin is absent, Vice Chair Sankamp.
Here.
And Chairman Blazak.
Here.
Okay, there are 8 members of the commission in attendance tonight. 5 affirmative votes are needed for a certificate of appropriateness. All right. We have a plethora of meeting minutes to review and hopefully approve tonight. We can start oldest to newest. So the first is the minutes from the regular meeting of February 6th. Anyone have any questions, comments, concerns, corrections? If not, anyone want to make a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Okay. All right, we'll do a roll call for this because I know some commissioners were absent. Commissioner Gucciardo.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Amatuzza.
Aye.
Commissioner Griga.
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther.
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis.
Aye.
Commissioner Gordon.
Aye.
Commissioner Sakong is absent. Commissioner Cronin is absent. Vice Chair Sankamp.
Aye.
And Chairman Blazak.
Aye.
Okay. These minutes from February 6th are approved. 8 voting in favor, none against. All right, March 13th, same deal. Corrections, comments, concerns, questions.
Motion
Aye.
to approve.
Second.
All right, I have Stephen and then Kelly. All right, roll call vote again. Commissioner Gunther,
Aye.
Commissioner Amatuzza,
Aye.
Commissioner Gordon,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis,
Aye.
Commissioner Gucciardo,
Aye.
Commissioner Griga,
Aye.
Commissioner Sakong is absent, Commissioner Cronin is absent, Vice Chair Sankamp.
Aye.
And Chairman Blazak.
Aye.
All right, and last one, April 4th. Questions, comments, concerns, corrections.
Motion.
Second.
All right, Commissioner Gordon,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis.
I don't think I was at that meeting.
Yeah, did you read them or do you want to abstain?
Abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Amatuzza,
Aye.
Commissioner Griga,
Aye.
Commissioner Gucciardo,
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther.
Abstain.
Okay, Commissioner Sakong is absent. Commissioner Cronin is absent. Vice Chair Sankamp.
Abstain.
Okay, and Chairman Blazak.
I will also abstain.
Okay, the minutes are approved. 4 votes in favor, none against, with 1, 2, 3, 4 abstentions. All right. Moving on, correspondence. All application materials for tonight's applications are linked on the agenda under the case number. Copies of correspondence were also distributed to commissioners. Staff received an email this evening. This afternoon regarding Reservoir 3 that was also distributed to the commission as well. All right, announcements. The only announcement I have is that Commissioner Stango, who was previously on the commission, has resigned. He got a promotion at work, did not feel that he could commit enough time to the agenda. We thank him, the commission, but we do thank him for his time spent on the commission. So we do have an open Class C seat. All right. That's the only announcement I have, so we can move to open public comment. If there are any members of the commission, I'm sorry, guys. If there are any members of the public who would like to speak tonight regarding matters not on tonight's agenda, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. If you're on the phone, you can press *9. Again, this is for matters not on tonight's agenda. I know we do have a case on here, so if you're planning to speak regarding 247th Street, please know that there is a public portion for that as well. And you will not be permitted to address the commission on that now. It'll be during that application. So again, this is for matters not on tonight's agenda. All right, I see 2 hands raised. So we want to make a motion to open public comment.
Motion to open?
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So before I start promoting members of the public, I do just want to very briefly review the standards for public comment before the HPC. We'll promote you to be a panelist. You have to accept the panelist invitation in order to address the commission. We'll swear you in, then you state and spell your name for the record. Once you finish that, I will start your 3-minute timer. You'll be permitted to address the commission for up to 3 minutes. Any questions you have for the commission can be addressed to the chair, Mr. Blazak, and following public comment, he will distribute those questions for answers as is appropriate. All right, first name I see is Cynthia Hagianis. So Cynthia, I'm going to go ahead and promote you. Cynthia, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera. Great. Bridget, if you want to swear her in.
Oh, okay. As an officer of the court, I don't believe she has to be sworn in.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Cynthia, do you mind just spelling your name? For
Sure. Sure. My name is Cynthia Hagianis, CYNTHIA HADJIYANNIS, and I'm not here as a lawyer tonight.
Okay, then raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Maggie, before she begins, I believe that our bylaws provide for 5 minutes of speaking time and the chairman can adjust it to 3. So I don't know whether Chairman Blazak wanted to do that here.
I'm fine with 5.
I'm sorry, that's my mistake. 5 is totally fine with me as well. All right, 5 minutes it is. Thank you for that, Robert.
Up to
Up
Okay,
to 5.
and I may not need the entire 5 minutes. I don't know if everybody, well, good evening, Chairman Blazak and commissioners. I don't know if everyone saw the letter that I sent earlier today. It has to do with Reservoir 3 in the Heights. It's a landmark listed to the state and National Register of Historic Places. I've been involved, and I'm one of the founding members of the Jersey City Reservoir Preservation Alliance. We've been around working first to save the reservoir, then to get it preserved and now transformed into a park for the past 20 years. And I'm the only original founding member still on the board. So the letter is about the city's application that was submitted to the State Historic Preservation Office for project authorization. And I just wanted to make sure it was on the commission's radar. The commission was identified as an interested party in the application. Under state regulations and under our own local ordinance, the commission has the right to comment on the application. And the reason I feel this has become more important in the past week is because the State Historic Sites Council was supposed to hold a hearing on the application, and it did not because it could not get a quorum. And now I've been notified that a decision will be made without a public hearing on May 18th, which is less than a month from today. And I really was hoping that the Historic Preservation Commission would look at the application, evaluate it, maybe submit its own written comments to SHPO before a decision is made, and possibly consider holding a special meeting on the application, though I understand the deadline's looming. It might be hard to organize a special meeting so quickly. I don't know if that deadline can be adjusted by agreement or voluntarily by the city, but I think it makes the fact that the state's not holding a hearing on the application makes your role even more important. Our organization, we've met with the city over a number of months. We have some concerns about the design of the bridge, about its potential destructiveness to the site, about the sequence, the kind of phasing of things, because there's all this money to restore the structures inside the site that for projects that have been pending for quite some time. And I'm concerned that the bridge will end up taking precedence over things that have already been funded that actually restore the landmark and need to be in motion so that the funding's not lost. So I'm hoping you will consider this request and possibly holding a special meeting on the application. I appreciate your reading my letter and allowing me to comment this evening.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
All right. Going to attendee. All right, the next hand I see raised is G Eagle. I'll go ahead and promote you.
Yes, we'll let the next person talk, and then we can discuss and ask you any questions.
Yeah. All right, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Well, to be honest, I prefer not to turn on the video. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. It does make us difficult to swear you in without the camera, but
Sworn in. all I want to do is.
I'm sorry,
offer
sir. We do
my,
have to swear you in before you provide the commission with public comment. So we'll trust that you're raising your right hand, I suppose.
Okay, my right hand is up.
Okay.
Could you state and spell your full name for the record?
Name is Gene Eagle, G-E-N-E-E-A-G-L-E.
Okay, Maggie, I cannot swear to somebody I cannot see. I can just
Okay.
ask them if they can verify that they are who they are, but it's not going to be under oath unless Jonathan wants to swear them in.
We can, I suppose we can take the public testimony without someone being up. We've never done, Jonathan, can we do that? We've never done that before.
I'm where it says that I need to see their face to swear them in.
Okay. All right.
I'm
If you're
sorry,
comfortable
I
with that.
didn't hear that. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said I don't see where it says that you have to see someone's face to swear them in.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
great.
and Jonathan, if you're comfortable swearing him in.
Sure. Can you raise your right hand? And I'm trusting you're raising it, like Maggie said. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And Bridget, you
Okay.
already got his name for the record, right?
Gene Eagle.
Perfect.
Okay, so basically, I'll try to be very quick and just 2 points. I reside on 234 7th Street. I think it is both. On
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Is this in regards to the application tonight for 247th Street?
Oh, is that not, well, yes. Is that
Okay, yeah,
not
so
this
we
time
actually, the
period?
way HPC takes public comment is we have an open public comment portion at the beginning where it's stuff that's not on tonight's agenda. You'll have the opportunity to give public
I
comment
see.
on that when we call that application, which will be
My
next.
apologies.
Okay, no problem. We'll wait to hear from you then.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you. All right, staff sees no additional hands raised, so I would recommend a motion to close public comment.
Motion to close.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
So, does anyone have any follow-up questions regarding Reservoir 3?
So I guess my question is for Maggie, and I missed part of that dialogue prior to the opening of the meeting. However, my question is, if this is a state and municipal, not a municipal, but state landmark, how can and who is it that's taking the initiative to make a decision about putting a bridge in without having a hearing with SHPO?
So, just as a full backstory, so the HPC staff submitted the application on behalf of the city for this project. We've been involved in this Reservoir 3's rehabilitation since the very beginning. We submitted the staff on the application on behalf of staff of the city. And we've been working on it the entire time. The state it's not that the state is not choosing to take public comment on the application. They failed to get a quorum for their Historic Sites Council for 2 months. Two separate meetings, which is over the course of 4 months. And they have a period of time in which they are required to act on the application. So what switches now is that instead of a public hearing similar to our HPC meetings, the commissioner will individually review each application. The public and any consulting parties have the ability to provide public comment, but written public comment to the commissioner prior to any decision being rendered. So any individual commissioners have that option. Any members of the public have that option. Any consulting parties as a result of this project have that option.
Sorry, Maggie, please slow down.
I'm sorry. And all of that will be taken into consideration before the commissioner reviews the application. I do just want to touch very quickly, Cynthia, one of your concerns was that you're afraid some of the funding to go from funding for the rehabilitation of some of the buildings, which is planned. It is just a later phase of this project will go towards the bridge. They're all completely separate funding sources. Gatehouse 1 and the Screen House are funded by New Jersey Historic Trust capital grants. And Gatehouse 2 is the only one that's also funded by capital funding, which is the source of the funding for the bridge as well. The phasing of the project would be that we would do the Screen House and Gatehouse 1 first. We use up that funding, and then we would
Maggie, I need you to slow down. Could you
Okay,
repeat
I'm
that, please?
There's no
Yes.
hurry, we're good.
You're talking like 250 words a minute. The phasing of the proximity would be that we would do the
Gatehouse 1 and Screen House first, using the New Jersey Historic Trust funding. And then we would move on to Gatehouse 2, which is capital funding. So the phasing of the projects mean that the sources of funding don't really touch each other.
And can you clarify, I think Cynthia mentioned this briefly in her testimony. Reservoir 3 is not a local landmark, correct? But it is on the state and national register. And
Right,
that's being referred to the state. And if I'm remembering correctly, in the past, we have reviewed some, I'm specifically thinking of the Lowe's Theater. That's not a local landmark. However, that has to be referred to us by the planning and zoning board first, correct?
Right. So you're right that the reservoir and the Lowe's are in similar situations where both are on the state register and national register, but they're not locally designated. We heard the Lowe's application because the Lowe's was what's called a Section 31 review. It was required to be reviewed by the planning board. Because it was required to be reviewed by the planning board, I was able to go in and intercede and say, hey, this should be heard by the HPC too, because it was going to the planning board. The project at Reservoir One does not require a Section 31 review, so I was not able to step in and redirect it towards the HPC.
So at this time, do we have any like legal authority besides our comments, which is as I'm aware, it's been done by staff going
Correct.
back forever. I mean, the staff does it on behalf of commission is how it's done.
Right, yes, the commission has provided, the commission staff has provided comments on behalf of the commission to the state. But yeah, without a trigger in the MLUL, so that's gonna be a planning or zoning board development application or a Section 31 review, there's really no way to legally get it to the HPC without it being a local landmark.
Okay. And I'm just curious, is it possible to provide us with the comments for our review?
Sure.
Thank
Yeah.
thank you, Brian. I was hoping you would ask that question.
Yeah.
I am more than happy to, I can put them, I honestly, at this point, I can just put them on the data portal. I think
Okay.
that'd be easiest.
And is there anything precluding the HPC from writing a letter or commenting to the state?
Individually, no, there's nothing precluding any of you from,
Not
Right.
individually, but as a commission. Can we voluntarily make a comment or write a letter?
sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is totally, you guys can totally do that as well.
Well, I want to thank Ms. Hagianis for bringing this to our attention because I was certainly unaware. So I think it's important that we at least have awareness, and I appreciate that. Maggie, can you speak to the feasibility of her request to hold a special meeting for further discussion?
So our next HPC meeting is May 15th, which is less than 3 weeks away, or I guess exactly 3 weeks away, feasibility wise. I'm sorry. So next HPC meeting is May 15th. The commissioner will have a decision rendered by at least May 18th. That is their deadline for doing it. I do not know if they're going to do it sooner or later. But my understanding is that it has to be done by then. The feasibility of having a special meeting when we already have another HPC meeting scheduled in the next 3 weeks, I would say is extremely slim, if not impossible. But it's also important to note that without a legal trigger to get it to come to the HPC, I don't know how we would have a special meeting.
So I imagine part of the purpose of that special meeting would be to allow an opportunity for further public comment and discussion, although I suppose members of the public could also address this directly to the Historic Sites Council.
Well, right. So that's an important distinction, because if, let's say there was a legal trigger where we could have an HPC meeting, a special meeting regarding this, the HPC would not be rendering a decision on this application.
Right.
So, right. So all of the public comment would need to be, so you would essentially be giving public comment twice. You'd be giving it to a body that cannot make any decision on the application, or you can be providing it to the agency that is making the decision on the application. So, I mean, the advice from staff is that if there are members of the public who have comments on this application, it is to address them to the New Jersey SHPO office. If anyone wants specific guidance on how to address that, I'm happy to provide it over email. So if there are members of the public here who would like to send me an email, I'm more than happy to direct them to the correct person.
And finally, Maggie, could you just speak briefly as to the merits, so to speak, as to whether you feel that this highway style bridge would be appropriate?
Sure. I disagree with the categorization that it's a highway style bridge. I mean, it is a prefabricated bridge, but it is a custom prefabricated bridge. We spent many months going back and forth over the design of this bridge. It is very minimal in nature. The railing alongside of the bridge matches the safety railing on the exterior of the reservoir, so your eye moves horizontally across it as one piece. We kept as much, we designed the bridge in a way where we kept as much of that opening that everyone has become accustomed to. The opening itself is not historic, but everyone is accustomed to that large opening on the Jefferson Ave side, so we've tried to keep as much of that as possible. While we were working with the Reservoir Alliance on this bridge design, they recommended we even push it back a little bit. We took that consideration to heart, pushed it back further. We're actually able to further minimize our areas of our limits of disturbance for the bridge. So this design option, while is certainly the thing that you can see visually the most, it's actually the least impactful on the site and on the historic fabric. Some of the other options that we considered that ended up not being feasible or not being as appropriate of an option as the bridge, we had originally designed switchbacks going up the curve of the slope. That was actually, once we went into construction documents for that with engineering, that was determined to be not feasible because the slope was just slightly too much to accommodate true ADA accessibility. And the engineers were concerned about the impact of that structurally on the exterior of the wall. So we looked at that option. We looked at reconstructing the wall across Jefferson Ave. That was not possible because we do not have enough historic material to accomplish that. That would be a fantastic disturbance to the site. You would lose a lot of that vegetation that we tried to keep when we were doing the exterior walking path. And also there are there are archaeological remains of the original foundation under that breach now that if we reconstructed the wall, we would essentially have to destroy. So that was an option that we also threw out as well. There's always the option of not doing anything, right? Not building a bridge, but then the site is not ADA accessible, and that's not an option that the city is willing to pursue for obvious reasons. Yeah, so those are some of the other things that we looked at, but at the end of the day, we considered as many options as we could, and the bridge was the one that we determined to be the most appropriate for the historic nature of the site.
Also, if we leave the trail the way it is, a full quarter of the site is completely inaccessible.
Right, yes. The section of the site from the Jefferson Ave Bridge to Gatehouse 1 without something there to connect them, that entire section of the site is inaccessible.
So Maggie, I have a question. You did say that both structures are going to be restored prior to any bridge construction happening.
So that's not quite what I said. I said that they have a different funding source, and that the construction of the bridge, the cost of that, which I have absolutely no information on. I will say that now. I know it's capital funding. I have no idea where, what, how much. That's not my purview. I just know that the Screen House and Gatehouse 1 are funded. The restoration of those are funded by a New Jersey Historic Trust capital grant, which we received in 2022.
So I have another question.
Yes.
If the bridge is constructed prior to both those buildings being restored, it still does not give you access to the entire trail, because where those buildings are completely fenced off, that no one can enter the area from the fence that's at newly constructed fence that they put up at the perimeter all the way across the site. So if they put a bridge there, you're still not able to get around the whole site without those two buildings being fixed.
So the Screen House, that path is accessible. Gatehouse 1, you're correct that there is a fence that blocks off if you were to walk through Gatehouse 1, because you can't, because there's no floor in Gatehouse 1. You, by building a bridge here, you are able to access the whole site. You're just not necessarily at this moment in time able to do a full loop. Until we restore Gatehouse 1, you will not be able to do a full loop. The intention is to restore we are going to restore Gatehouse 1. We have the funding to do it. At this moment in time, you're not able to do a complete loop, but you are able to access the whole site.
I mean, just because, we've been using this reservoir for 20 years. There's been no kind of safety, anything. It's been open on weekends. There's been all kinds of activities that have gone on there for 20 years. And now it just seems like all of a sudden we have these urgencies to put bridges and fencing and lighting in a place that's supposed to be like a natural trail. Why we need lighting when it's not even going to be open at night? I'm still trying to wrap my head around. So I don't understand the sense of urgency all of a sudden to get this bridge funding in place and blah, 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 blah. It's like, I just think, sometimes we could just leave well enough alone. In all the years that it's been used by the public with no kind of, even before there were even trails, you just kind of walked around up there in the woods. There are no.
I think that's a policy issue that the current administration has pursued to develop this into more of a park. And I think we're really in the weeds, and this really isn't a discussion we should be having, and we should be moving along.
Right, yeah, I take all your comments to heart, Paul. I'm not high enough up to answer them.
Okay.
All right.
And unfortunately, it'd be great if this were a local landmark and we could really get into this, but it's not.
Yeah, and why isn't it? That's another good question.
So, I think we should move on to, 8 old business. Old business. So we're gonna go right
Chairman,
to.
I see that Ms. Hajianis has raised her hand again. Did you want to allow her to speak again? I don't think she used her full 5 minutes.
No, I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, we just had a pretty extensive discussion on it. All right, Brian, should we continue on with the agenda?
Yes. So we're gonna go to 9A. This is H20 357. This is Maria P. Vallejo Esquire and Kenneth A. Porro Esquire on behalf of Benjamin and Angelo Gentile. This is 238 to 247th Street, block 10005, lot 24 in the Hamilton Park Historic District. This is for a certificate of appropriateness for facade restoration, interior renovations, construction of a full-height rear addition, and expansion of a non-conforming use at an altered, key-contributing vernacular classical revival building with Greek revival influences, constructed circa 1840 in the Hamilton Park Historic District. This is a recommendation to the Jersey City Zoning Board of Adjustment. I believe the applicants have entered.
Hello, my name is Ken Porro, Jason Lamparello here in Secaucus on behalf of the applicant. Thank you, Chairperson, for that summary. One of the points I wanted to bring forth is the nice job that your interdepartment memo of today's date. It really memorializes the issues and makes my life easy on the presentation. Tonight we have Maria is also on the line, my colleague, and Anthony Vandermark, who is our architect. And we also have the client, Ben Gentile, if necessary. Ben is actually calling from his cell phone, but Anthony, I'm sure, will have computer access if need be. Again, turning to the application, and thank you for your memorandum. And as the chairman had said, this is a classical revival of the building with Greek revival influences, constructed around 1840 in the Hamilton Park Historic District. And also on page 3, the staff noted that there are 2 variances that we are looking to the Board of Adjustment, a D2 variance for the expansion of a non-conforming use and a parking variance. And as the applicant is the HPC staff's opinion, the granting of these variances will not cause an adverse effect on the integrity of the historic resource or the Hamilton Park Historic District. The memorandum on page 3 goes on to say, in HPC staff's opinion, the project as proposed will not cause an adverse effect on the character and or integrity of the Hamilton Park Historic District. And the staff recommends approval of the certificate of appropriateness and recommendation for approval to the zoning board with the following conditions. And there are 11 listed. There is no objection to any.
Mr. Porro, we will actually cover all of that during staff comments if you want to. Just introduce Mr. Vandermark and give the commission a brief overview of the project.
Okay, just to finish my thought, there is no objection to the 11 comments or conditions. Thank you. Anthony, how are you?
I'm good this evening, Ken. How you doing?
Good. Anthony,
I'm sorry, could you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state and spell your full name for the record.
Absolutely. That is Anthony C. Vandermark Jr., Vandermark V as in Victor, ANDERMARK.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anthony, you're a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey?
I am, and it is still current.
Very good. And have you been accepted as an expert in architecture before Jersey City boards?
I have, and it's been several years before I've been in front of this commission, but I'm glad to be back.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask you to accept Mr. Vandermark as an expert in the area architectural.
Yes, we can accept him, and we've seen him many times.
Good. Anthony, why don't you give us the overview of what you did in the project?
Anthony, you should be able to share your screen if you'd like to present the plans.
Yeah, sounds good. Ken, I have some exhibits in here that obviously weren't filed with the submission drawings, and, you know, subject to what happens this evening, I would like to, file this post meeting. So if we can, just enter this into evidence.
Yeah, we can, are they all contained in this set? Or are you gonna jump back and forth between files?
No, they're all contained in this set. I just have
Okay.
some support information should I need it. But
Sure.
everything here I could Dropbox to you, Maggie.
Yeah, that's fine. Bridget, can we mark this set as A1 and we'll just call it presentation set?
That would be A1 for this application.
Thank you. All right, you should be good to go.
Okay, fantastic. If we look at the kind of center graphic in color labeled zoning map directly before you, the subject site is in the Hamilton Park Historic District, and the structure itself is historic in nature, and we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. Under site location map, graphic above dead center, we have an unusually large parcel that sits in a historic district. This lot is 55 feet, 9 inches wide by 100 feet deep. That totals in 5,575 square feet in area. As you can see from the graphic, it is the largest parcel on subject block, 1005. And again, as previously mentioned by Mr. Poro, this structure is significant. We believe it was constructed back in 1840, which almost makes it 200 years old. The application before you this evening kind of comes in two parts, right? We have a full restoration of a almost 200-year-old structure in compliance, or what we believe in compliance with the Secretary of the Interior standards. And then we are proposing a rear addition to the existing historic structure that we feel is in compliance with the historic component of the Jersey City Land Use Development Ordinance. So we're kind of wrestling with a few different things here. And, this application, as previously mentioned, will be subject to approval by the Jersey City Zoning Board of Adjustment because of the quote unquote use variance that you have before you this evening. As you probably know, the historic zones in the Land Use Development Ordinance does not permit multifamily use. It does permit what is called quote unquote townhome, okay, which has the ability to go up to 4 units on a single parcel. What we have here is a lot at least larger than technically 2 lots in the historic district. So if you run the permitted density calculation of 75 dwelling units per acre that the historic zone permits, it allows 10 units. And this application before you has a interior renovation with an addition of 10 units. The proposed lot coverage is 10% less than what is permitted. The proposed building coverage, 10% less than what is permitted. We seek another variance as part of this application for parking. Projects or applications 10 units and above are subject to a 0.5 parking requirement. Because of the way the building is situated on this lot, parking just simply can't be done. You would destroy the existing historical structure. So therefore, we're asking a parking variance of 5 parking spaces. We do have one design waiver because of the narrowness of the sidewalk, because of the way the property is situated. Sidewalk is 7 feet in width, and we'll get into why we cannot comply with providing 2 street trees as part of this application. 1938 tax photo. The image is not very clear. Again, it lists that the structure was built approximately around 1900. We believe, again, much older than that, approximately 60 years earlier than even what they anticipated as part of this, tax mapping. Again, if you enlarge that image, it's not very clear about what the exterior materials were, even of the time it was documented. We have another image a couple of slides back that's a little bit more clear, so we can kind of get into it then. The existing structure on the property is 4 stories in height. As you can see, it's in pretty rough shape. It needs some TLC. If you go back to some of the original photographs, and if we start dead center here forward, we have the existing front porch or stoop that was in 2 directions that has since been severed to 1 direction to the east. All of the ornamental ironwork and or steel picket work has been removed. Any of the existing clapboard and or siding has since been covered over with aluminum siding. We have aluminum replacement windows, and we have deteriorating, front door and some bracket and some canopy. I think that looks like it's the original that is just needs to be restored and or replaced in kind. As you can see now from the cleaned up photograph that was provided by Maggie, and thank you very much for that, it looked like there was an existing clapboard facade, a grouping of 5 bays of windows. There was no divided light on the upper portion. The lower portion at the foundation line, as you can see, it looks like a 2/2 single divided light on both sashes, double hung. As you can see in the center of this photograph, the porch stoop was 2 directional, had some really nice detail as far as the handrails and the ironwork leading from grade all the way up to the entry doors. And again, the picket line was different from what the previous photograph that I showed you. So what the intent is here this evening is to restore to the time of significance to when this building was prominent, right? So in compliance with the Secretary of Interior standard, we're looking to replicate this with the direction, obviously, of Historic Officer Maggie O'Neill. And we will be doing exploratory hand demolition work on the facade to see if we can get layers of maybe previously what existed here. Again, this is a perspective from the west looking east. The gate line and the porch line, even though severed, is actually in the public right of way. I think as part of this application, when renovated, I think we're going to have to seek some form of franchise to put the porch back together with the city of Jersey City. We have some existing planters. We have the existing sidewalk, which is concrete with an existing bluestone curb. Going back, we are going to be adding these planters back in as part of this application. This is east looking west, concrete step up, a lot of deterioration at the facade, and some bad patchwork on the foundation line. As you can see down the alleyway line, there is a shingle siding on the existing structure with the aluminum replacement windows. Again, we don't think the shingles or the cedar shingles are original in nature to the application. This will be the new proposal. This is a 3-dimensional rendering, and what we feel and as recommended in the color palette that the restoration should be in. Again, we will return all handrails, all fencing, all side fencing at the gate line to the original as per the cleaned up photo and not the 1938 tax photo. As you can see here, overhang is restored. We will be using a 5-inch exposed cedar clapboard in a time-sensitive color, with an accent color at the non-divided light windows above. We are requesting as part of this application to add a second window at the foundation for the first floor units to match the single sash divided light in a matching color. And again, we feel that the colors are appropriate, and we have accent trim around each window and also at the corners of the siding. Taking you to the site plan and site plan application itself, we have a pre-existing 4-story wood frame structure. We have two-story additions that are not original to the structure. We are proposing to raise those additions as part of this application and create a 4-story addition to the rear of the pre-existing 4-story structure. It was recommended that this addition not be seen from both over the top of the structure and then also down each alleyway. So this addition is 1 foot in on both side yards from the pre-existing structure. So the existing building covers approximately 1,382 square feet, and we're proposing a 1,392 square foot addition at 4 stories. Now with the stairs, we're covering 2,808 square feet, and that's the equivalent of 50.4% of the overall building coverage. We're proposing a 30-foot rear yard setback. This is in compliance with the historic zone rear yard setback line. We're proposing a perimeter board-on-board fence in the rear yard. We are actually landlocked by 2 adjacent structures, both to the east and to the west. Around the perimeter of the structure, we are proposing concrete permeable pavers and then bluestone pavers in the front yard, located at both sides of the entry porch, and then landscaping in both front corners, and then also on the entry point onto the stairs. We were proposing all new concrete and sidewalks, but again, because of the short dimension of 7 feet, we cannot propose any new street trees with street planter boxes in conformance with the Jersey City Forestry Standard. Jersey City Forestry Standard requires a 5-foot deep planter bed, which would leave only 2 foot wide of sidewalk, so therefore impossible to put in. But the landscaping at the gate line, we think, will be more appropriate, and again, similar to what's pre-existing and what was historically there. Pre-existing photographs now of the 2-story rear addition that will be scheduled to be raised as part of this application. In the background is the 4-story portion of the existing structure that is to be maintained and re-sided with a new 5-inch cedar clapboard. Again, this is the eastern portion of the rear yard, 2-story addition to be removed. In the foreground, again, 2-story addition to be removed. To both east and to the west, as you can see, the 3-story with basement masonry structures, the adjacent properties. As part of this application, we are providing a stormwater detention system. So the current property, again, between structure and any of the impervious goes either directly into the runoff or goes directly into the combined storm and sanitary system. This detention system now, obviously for a 100-year storm event, will collect rainwater in the rear yard and from any of the leaders on the old and the new roof. Again, and then the stormwater will slowly dissipate back into the municipal system. So this is one of the improvements, kind of green building improvements that's part of this application. Again, the side yards are kind of existing impervious. We are proposing impervious concrete pavers around the perimeter And as you can see to the rear, a small apron here. Simply landscaping plan again, proposed tree. Hopefully we can maintain the existing tree to the, which would be the southwest of the facade. And then a new planter box to the southeast of the facade. We are proposing a board-on-board fence, again, to the back exposed sections that are not interrupted by adjacent structures, and a hedgerow to the back of the property, and a simple grass rear yard with the 30-foot rear yard, as previously mentioned. All of the lighting, again, will be at 0.5-foot candles and be directed down. So this will not be directed into anyone adjacent properties window line. When you look at the pre-existing building, both in street facade and again, in property size and the way the building is situated, you can see the prominence, of this structure. This maybe was the first structure potentially on this side of the block. The structures to the rear against the rear property line, as you can see, are very deep. And when we get to the proposal, we are compliant with the rear yard, but still a great distance away from the rear yard as opposed to the pre-existing condition to the north of us. The row houses to both the east and the west are shorter, but again, property width is narrower and the buildings are of a decent age as well. Quick aerial. Again, existing structure forward, labeled 247th Street with the red dot. A heavily kind of nicely maintained, as you can see, street trees all the way down our block frontage. Also in the hole in the donut, in between structures to both the south and north of this block. Again, rear yard addition will be slightly past the existing structures to the east and the west, but still compliant with the historic zoning standards. Buildings to the rear, again, are rather deep up against our property line. When I get into the building program, of the 10 units, we are proposing 2 studios, 4 one-bedrooms, 3 two-bedroom duplexes, and 1 3-bedroom at the top floor. We have 4 unit entry points here at the first floor. We have trash storage. We have bicycle parking in the interior that is compliant with the Jersey City zoning standards. Here we have a studio to the bottom left and 3 duplexes, bottom right, to the rear, and to the rear left. Second floor again, second floor of the duplexes, center hallway, and again, an additional studio to the bottom left-hand side of the floor plan here. Working your way up the building. Third floor, 4 one-bedrooms. Top floor, 1 3-bedroom unit. At the roof, all mechanical equipment will be centrally located on the addition. It will be screened from view. It will be set far back from the property line and the right-of-way, so it will not be seen. They will be on vibration isolators, so the adjacent neighbors will not hear these condensers. We also removed the stair bulkhead, and we provided a stair hatch. Okay, this way there's no additional height added to this building line, and it will not, basically be seen from view from the street. So really what you're looking at from a viewing standpoint is just the restored front facade. You won't be able to look down each alleyway and see the addition. You won't be able to see over the top of the restored facade and see the addition. Again, mechanical units will be screened. The screen, I don't anticipate that being any higher than 42 inches in height. We removed the bulkhead, but we still have fire department access to the roof via access hatch. So again, it's going to be a pure facade without anything over the top of it. Proposed overall building height, again, of the addition matches the front restored 4-story facade at 36 feet 6 inches. In these older buildings, the floor-to-floor heights were very low, and we're choosing to obviously mimic the floor level, so everything is in line. The proposed clapboard as fully restored will continue into the rear addition. We have pre-primed painted windows at the front facade, and what we request as part of this application that the other 3 facades, the 2 sides and the rear, we have a Marmon aluminum clad pebble in color to match the color at the front facade. We just ask that, you know, the Historic Commission just think about maintenance of such items in the long term on this. Rear of the building, divided light, 2/2 with a center mull. Again, painted clapboard finish, windows to match the other 3 sides with a wrap that matches the front facade, same color as the accent color, and the clapboard is the same color. And the foundation also has a parge coat matching in color to both the front stairs and the front facade. And again, going back, existing rear additions to be removed. And as part of this application, again, rear addition, set back in 1 foot off of the sides without any bulkhead. Again, building section here. There will be a foundation excavation for the addition. But as you can see here, existing structure, proposed addition. And when we get to some of the details of the facade, we have detailed each railing and the steel work around each railing and the construction of the new porch, you know, with various details. So for you, again, we think we have a very good application that, you know, really it's going to be a very tedious restoration of the front facade. And we think we have a complementary rear addition, again, that is compliant in density, but not in use because townhome goes up to 4 units, multifamily, again, if combined 2 townhomes, we have 10 units here. So we'll be requesting a use variance in front of the ZBA with a parking variance, but as you can see, there's no place to put a garage and you'd ruin the facade if you did provide parking. So this concludes my testimony for the application.
Thank you, Anthony. Commission, that's the only witness I have for this evening. That would conclude our testimony. Mr. Gentile is available if you have any questions of him. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony and thank you for taking us through that, Anthony.
Sure.
Are there any questions from any commissioners at this time?
I have questions.
Go ahead.
My first question is about the window and door configurations, because I noticed there seemed to be some discrepancy in the rendering versus the drawings with regard to the doors, but I'll start with the windows on the front facade. It looks like you're proposing 1/1s. Is that correct? The rendering shows 1/1, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that is correct. But at the foundation line, it'll be 2/2 because the original structure, for some reason, looked like it had 2/2 at the foundation line as shown in this photograph.
You know, I asked partly because I did notice that the rest of the facades did show 2/2 configuration. And given that this building is 1840, that would have been more typical. I think 1/1s would be atypical on a building that old. And also I noticed then the doors in the drawings, they seem to resemble what's currently on the building, but the rendering seemed to have 10 light doors. And I would just recommend taking a closer look at the proportions of the lights on the doors relative to the windows so that it blends better. Because I feel like, you know, a 10 light window might not look as appropriate with 2/2 windows as say an 8 light door.
Well, I think that's a very good observation, and perhaps my renderer in-house would get some sort of a tongue lashing, but we will be, obviously it'll be an 8 light door to match the existing lights. If we cannot restore the door that is in place now, I don't know if that was original, probably not. When you're going back and forth on this, maybe. But again, we'll try to obviously match the division of lights on the entry doors to this photograph. And if the commission does feel that it's more appropriate to go 2/2, I don't think the owner has any opposition. We were just trying to kind of hit a moving target here, potentially what may have been there, right?
Okay, I just wanted a question about that because I noticed that everything else was 2/2. So it seems
Yeah.
odd that, it seems odd that only those 9 windows would not be.
It just seems more appropriate for the application that it's 2/2 around the rest of the building.
Okay, that's all for now. Thank you.
I have a question, this Commissioner Bucciardo. In your presentation, Mr. Van der Mark, you're talking about what was original to the building, but you know, obviously, we're not talking about a photograph from 1840 here. We're talking about something from the 1930s, I would imagine, yes?
Potentially, it seems like I don't know if these are the same photograph. The lighting.
They are.
If they are,
Okay.
this just looks like a better version, but that's correct. You're looking at a photograph from the 1930s.
Right, so just to be clear, what the applicant is proposing is to take the building back to that particular period, right? Of what the photo documentation allows, right?
That is the intent, or if this commission or if the historic officer feels something is different or more appropriate to this building, we will certainly comply with that.
Was there any effort to research possibly earlier photographs of the property?
I know on our end we tried, but we didn't come up with anything.
Okay. My concern is that if we're saying that you're thinking that the building's 1840s, and there's an opportunity here to have it contribute as best as it can to the neighborhood, and given that it's such a large building, you know, I would hope that every effort was made to find the earliest possible photograph. And with the scale of the project being done, there's also looks like there may be the opportunity to do more here, you know, on the facade. That would be my hope. Obviously, if this is the only photograph you have, this is what we've got to go by. But that was just a thought, and I would concur with what previous commissioner said.
Yeah, I think this one is one that it would have helped to have some probes done beforehand.
Yeah.
So that we're, you know, able to document if there's any historic fabric underneath any of the layers of siding that are currently on the building. Because I do agree that, especially for a larger addition and something that needs a variance, you know, having something a little bit more restorative, I think would be favorable. And, you know, I don't think like the awning is original, and that, you know, just like the way that it's shown in the rendering. And maybe if you can go to that for just a moment, to that last slide. Or any of the, yeah, it's just something where like, I don't know if that really, if we're going to be restoring and putting clapboard on, I don't know if, you know, the awning is something that needs to stay. And there was, I think, likely a cornice, a projecting cornice on the
Right.
building at some point. but-
Exactly, Brian. The roof line is not likely that was the roof line of this building originally either.
Yeah. So I think, you know, this is a tough one that I think it's going to require a lot of work with staff to do probes and to look at that documentation. I mean, we have had other projects where it's been altered by the 1940 tax photo, and we have to look at paint ghosts and kind of figure it out from there. So I'm sure that it can be done. It's just, you know, it needs to, you know, you have to take the fabric off the front of the building first and kind of see what you see in terms of historic evidence and fabric there. And I agree definitely in terms of Commissioner Gunther said in terms of, I mean, especially originally, it probably would have even been smaller than 2/2. Because I think even that's early for 2/2, 1840 probably would have been a 6/6, but I'd be fine with the 2/2. I mean, honestly, anything that's going to be here is going to be a little bit subjective anyway, because we don't have perfect documentation of the 1840. I doubt that stoop configuration is original. So I think this is a building that's been greatly altered over time. I am glad that this is being restored, though. I know in the past people have wanted to demolish this building completely. So I'm glad that that's not on the table here. I think that, that is something that people had asked in the past. So I'm happy to see it being rehabilitated. And I just have one follow-up question on the zoning variance. You said that this is so it's, how many units are there now?
There is 4 legal units with a 5th unit in the attic. I mean, that's kind of grandfathered there. It's been there for maybe 20 years. So you have 5 units currently in the building. The building, 4 or 5 units, it's still kind of a multifamily building in use right now. It's a pre-existing non-conforming use.
And how many are proposed?
10, which is the as of right density based on the size of the property.
And that's based on 75 units an acre, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But, and maybe Maggie can clarify. So we've never, I don't recall there being a variance just for a multifamily.
No, we've had them before.
We have, okay.
Yeah, multifamily is inexplicably not a permitted use within the historic district. I think the last time the commission saw a expansion of a non-conforming use for a multifamily was 250 First Street, when we did the subdivision of that and then heard the subsequent application for the new construction on the newly subdivided, sorry, Bridget, on the newly subdivided 275 Second Street. That was another expansion of a non-conforming use for a multifamily. I think that was the last one we did.
Okay. It just seems like that's insane to me that a multifamily is not permitted, but okay.
I agree with you, and if that's a great master plan suggestion, we want to hold that one to the presentation.
And in terms of, you're going to the full 30-foot setback, and what are the setbacks on the side yards?
Sure. So the pre-existing setbacks are 6'3" to the west, and 5'9" to the east, and then to the addition, 7'3" to the west and 6'9" to the east. So again, generous setbacks and an even greater setback to the addition than typically what you would see in most of Jersey City.
And how much from the depth of the deepest part of the addition, how much further is the addition going to go to? Looks like, is it 10? This is a 41-foot setback, so I guess it's another 11 feet.
I'm sorry.
If right now it's a 41-foot 1-inch setback, rear yard setback. So if you're going to the 30-foot setback, it's an additional 11.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Another question. If this was a 9-unit building, you would not need a variance for parking, correct?
That's correct.
Mhm.
Do the drawings show where the electric service will run?
We have the fire service set up and we have the metering set up underneath the porch for the electric service. On the exterior in a closet.
I think we made like the conduit up the side of the, it's, in this case, I think it'd be on the side of the building. It's usually, we usually have you put it on the plan so PSE&G doesn't decide to slap it on the front of the building.
That is a very good point. It's an overhead service now, and there is no pre-existing utility pole, so it's going to have to be swung in one way or the other. So unfortunately, right now, it kind of comes into the side of the building, which I'm probably still recommending, and then it's gonna have to, basically come down the side of the building and re-enter the metering in the front.
Is there any way to do that internally? From the side and then go inside rather than across the front of the building?
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize. It will, basically be coming in, just the head alone. And then the service line will be encased in concrete on the inside in a chase, boom, straight down, and then it'll backfeed to under the stairs. So agreed, you won't see the service like you do now on the outside of the building.
That detail would be helpful.
Sure.
I have a couple of comments. I think that I agree with the fellow commissioners about the windows on the primary facade. Even though you have 1/1, I think I agree with Brian, they must have been a building from 1840, would have probably been 6/6, possibly 2/2. I believe that there would have been a cornice at the top of the building. I also believe that the original front steps would have been wood from a building from 1840. This is a wood frame building. This is not a stone structure. And it very well could have had a porch across the whole entire front, given that it's southern facing. So I would like to request that when you do peel off the facade, that you look for ghosts of such things. Because I think that this facade to 1938 is still quite inappropriate and does the building no justice at the end of the day. It's still quite bland, and is not really going to change the appearance all that much. So I would like some further research done. I am not happy with this facade plan at all. The railings clearly from 1938, or in the 1930s period, and I know that that's where this photograph comes from, but I still think that they are way inappropriate. We usually don't even approve these on some brownstone applications that we get, because they're not period appropriate. So those are my concerns. I think the steps would have come straight down to the sidewalk. They would not have angled in two directions at this point in time. In 1840, I think it would have been, maybe there would have been a portico larger than what we see over the entrance and stairs straight down. But I don't feel that this new facade is going to do us any justice here. And that's it.
Any other questions from any commissioners?
Are we gonna get a chance to talk more about this after this portion, or should I bring it up now? I just have a question. Can we look at the plot plan that shows the footprint of the proposed addition? Or the block plan, I'm sorry, the block plan.
Sure.
I just wanted to, comment, because I know in one respect, there's the issue of the fact that the addition that's proposed is full height, which I think is something we all need to talk about. Because we are, when you see the building sections, losing sort of the volume of the original building, with the roof line changing. And also I'm a little bit concerned that the sort of size of the footprint of the addition is a little bit large. It seems to be almost as large, if not larger, than the original building. And it seems relatively unsympathetic to its neighbors and to the donut of the rear yards. And I'm wondering if maybe there is a version of this building that keeps the addition at least to the line of the maximum, the largest addition that's currently on the building, so that it's not overwhelming the adjacent properties.
Commissioner, if I could add, Ken Poro, if you look at the mapping on, those buildings are all built to the property line. So we are at least providing, and the top photo clearly shows that we are respecting the side yards, respecting light. So I think in that sense, and there is no variance required in the rear, but we respect what you're saying. But our neighbors are right up to our property line. They're not respecting our light at all, and that's okay. I mean, we're keeping the integrity of our line and respecting their view. Thank
Well,
you.
I'm talking about the rear property line and, whether or not something is sort of allowed by the mathematics of zoning is sort of one thing. And whether or not it is historically appropriate is sometimes a different issue.
I got you. If you look at the photo that's on now, straight ahead, we kind of dwarf the other buildings, but I respect what you're saying on the rear.
Yeah, and,
Oh, noted.
and just to go just slightly further on that, I mean, again, and we have an existing roof line on the existing front facade that we're not higher than. The building is, technically lower than what's permitted. Permitted is 40 feet in historic zone, and we're only at 36 feet, 6 inches. So the height of the addition, is again below what's even permitted. Now, I get the comment about sensitivity. However, the parameters of zoning are set in place, for additions, and any of the buildings in line here on any of the street frontage are entitled to actually provide a rear addition. Of course, they probably would have to come to you, but again, it's certainly something that could be considered. So again, we're not requesting a variance, for the encroachment into the rear yard. And we are certainly at a lot less lot coverage than what's permitted. Not saying that you want to go to a full maximum of lot coverage, but again, we thought that the addition being set in lower in height than is permitted, we were trying to be sensitive to the adjacent properties.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from commissioners at this time?
One other observation, there is a tree within the property, as you pointed out, to the west, that you're saying you might be able to save. And I noticed that you did a planter area to the east. But given there's not going to be an opportunity for street trees, would you consider possibly a second tree on the interior at the east to maybe also kind of not have this facade be as bare as it is? I know there are plenty of street trees within Hamilton Park that exist within the property line, and they seem to survive and do pretty well.
I certainly think that ownership would agree to that.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe even potentially a tree in the rear yard where you just have 30 feet of grass and some shrubs along the back wall.
I mean, we understand that you're within the boundaries of what's acceptable for rear yard and so forth, but you've also pointed out that this is one of the biggest buildings on the block. So when you do a full height rear yard addition, practically the full width of the building, its impact is quite massive compared to, a 15-foot wide building doing a rear yard addition. It's fairly massive. So I totally respect what Ms. Gunther was saying about the size of the addition.
Commissioner, if you could, Mr. Gentile, are you on the call? Because I think it's Anthony and I are recommending the second tree to the east and also the third tree to the rear. I don't know if Mr. Gentile, you can get on.
He's not on the call. I don't know if he's in attendees or not. But
Okay.
he's certainly not a panelist, which means that he is unable to comment on it. We're due for a break in about 5 minutes. If you want to try to
I can
reach him
call.
during that break, that's what I would recommend.
Good, that's fair. We're recommending the trees. Thank you.
All right, Kelly, I see your hand raised. Go for it.
My mistake.
All right.
So do we want to, it sounds like we're wrapping up questions. We want to take a 5-minute break and then come back and do public comment?
That's what I would recommend, yes.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Unless if there no other questions, we'll come back, do comments, public comment, and then we can continue if there's any other questions afterwards.
All right.
Back at 8 o'clock?
Back
yeah.
at 8 o'clock.
So remember to mute yourself, turn your cameras off, and turn your camera back on when you're back.
Thank you.
8:01, we're back from our quick break. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Ken Poro again for the record. I did have the opportunity to speak to Ben Gentile, who is just called in from his iPhone. He can hear me, but he doesn't have the computer access. He did give me authorization to agree to the 3 trees as suggested, the west side, the east side, and the rear. He also said that he did some due diligence and that he wasn't able to find any additional photos. But on the siding, he does think that chipboard is the primary siding that was identified by him and the architect. So, but we agree to those 11 conditions you have. If we find something, we would go through the process as outlined in your approval letter. Staff letter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And as you know, I guess if there's any other questions, he can still be reached by phone.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna open it up to public comment at this time. So I already see some hands raised. Again, you can use the raise hand function or utilize what?
Do you want to make a motion to open public comment first?
Motion to
yeah.
open.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
So I see some people have their hands raised. You can utilize the raise hand function. I don't see anyone on.
I don't see anyone on the phone either, but if you were on your phone, you could press *9.
All right, so we have, again, Maggie will keep time 5 minutes. You can direct any questions to us. We'll take notes, and after the entire public comment section is over, we will direct the questions to the applicant and ask any additional questions ourselves.
All right.
Go ahead.
The first hand I see raised is Matthias Johansson. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing your name. Gonna go ahead and promote you. Again, just a reminder, if you're intending to address the commission, you do have to accept the invitation to become a panelist. And then we'll be able to swear you in prior to you giving testimony. All right, you should be able to unmute yourself, turn on your camera.
Great. Could you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please state and spell your full name for the record.
Carl Matthias Johansson, and I live on 242 7th Street in Jersey City.
Could you spell your full name for the record?
CARL MATTIAS JOHANSSON.
Thank you.
And you had wanted to show the commission a couple slides as well, right?
That is correct.
All right, so Bridget, we have that, he had provided that to me via email. We can mark that as B2 for this application.
How about we make it Johansson 1?
Oh, that works even better. You're better at naming things than I am. All right, so you should be able to share your screen as well to present that to the commission. Just let me know when you're ready and I can start your time.
Yes. Before we start the time, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, we can see. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, 5 minutes begins now.
Okay. Dear Commission member, I want to share some recent research on the building that I've done in the last week, including very early historic photos, and illustrate why it's important and warrants protection.
I'm sorry.
The
could you
subject
repeat that
house-
last part, sir? I'm having a little trouble understanding.
Sorry, what did you say?
Could you repeat the last few words? I want to share some recent research I've done on the building last week, including the
His very early historic photos and illustrate why it's important and warrants protection. The subject house before the commission was built before 1841, is the oldest building on the block and probably the oldest in Hamilton Park Historic District. The building is shown on a map from 1841, and even on a map from 1850, it's one of the only a handful of buildings in the area around Hamilton Park. This was the homestead of farmer, businessman, and judge Stephen Garrettson, a prominent member of the community that held positions such as member of the Bergen Township Town Committee in 1839, judge of the inaugural Court of Common Pleas in Hudson County, 1840 onwards, founding director of the Pavonia Ferry Company, 1849, founder and funder of the Third Dutch Reformed Church, later Hamilton Park Reformed Church, just to name a few. I want to move on to the second photo. This circa 1875
No, I'm not getting
was
that,
taken.
sir. You're going in and out. Repeat. I want to move on to the second photo.
And show that what
I'm not getting this.
Oh, yeah, your internet is breaking up. We can't hear you. It might help if you turn off your video. For the record, I have his time paused.
Thank you.
Oh, are you back? We missed you. Faded out.
I apologize. Okay.
So the last thing we heard was, and I have your time paused for the record. The last
Okay.
thing we heard was at the very beginning of explaining the previous photo. That the photo
Okay.
was taken circa 1875, and then we lost you after that.
And I think Maggie suggested maybe, and this has helped, maybe just turning your camera off. Sometimes that helps if your internet's choppy.
Okay, I apologize for these issues. Okay, so this circa 1875 overview photo was taken from the Heights and shows what later became Hamilton Park. It shows cows grazing in the foreground and the Garrettson homestead in the background. One can see the chimneys on each side of the homestead and rear wing extending at the back. This second earlier photo shows the Garrettson homestead from a similar angle but much closer up. It highlights that the home was built when this part of Jersey City was almost exclusively rural farmland and woodlands. It was built before the local lots and streets were leveled or graded, and that's why it has such a high stoop in front of the building today. One can see that across 7th Street there was still woodlands when this photo was taken. The implication of this is that it's not only the building that is worthy of protection. The elevation and site itself has significant historic value, since it still maintains the original and natural height that has been lost almost all other parts of Hamilton Park. When it comes to the building envelope, it remains remarkably intact, with exception of the vinyl cladding on the street side. When analyzing this early photo in detail, one can see that all of the window openings from the historic photo remains in their original location today. The building retains historically correct shingle siding. The footprint of the rear wing also seems original. The only significant alteration to that is that the second story has been added at some point in the last 160 years. But these are minor changes that are easily reversible, and the original details can be restored with the help of this and other photographic evidence. When it comes to the appropriateness of the construction that has been put forward, the proposed plan shows a callous disregard for the historic district and the design standards that proposed work should be evaluated against. The first design standard requires that every reasonable effort shall be made to provide a compatible use for a property that requires minimal alteration of the building structure or site and its environment
That requires
to
minimal,
use a property
that
for its
requires
originally
minimal
intended purpose.
alteration of the buildings. You're going in and out, sir. The first design standard requires that every reasonable effort shall be made to provide a compatible use for property that requires minimal alteration of the buildings.
Structure or site and its environment to use a property for its original intended purpose. The proposed work is the exact opposite. Not only are the investors planning to demolish what appears to be an original wing of the building, but blow out the rest of the rear of the building, replace and board up window openings on the side, but they're also planning to excavate the land itself in order to add side doors at basement level and remove every original trace of the history of the site that the homestead stands as. None of these irreversible changes are necessary. To conclude, the historic Garrettson homestead and the site it sits on have particular historic significance as they provide a physical link back to the very earliest days of Jersey City, when it was still woodland and farmland.
30 seconds.
Along the proposed construction and excavation to proceed will cause irreparable harm to the Hamilton Park Historic District. I propose that the physical link that they provide to the early days of Jersey City warrants individual landmark status for both the building and the site.
Mr. Johansson.
Thank you.
You're gonna have to repeat the last part. I propose that the physical link that they provide to the
Early days of Jersey City warrants individual landmark status for both the building and the site, and a plaque should be installed. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Stop that. Give me just a second and we'll move on to the next public comment. All right, the next one I see is Diane Tider. I'm gonna go ahead and promote you. Hi, Diane, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Great. Would you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. State and spell your full name for the record.
Diane Tider, D-I-A-N-E-T-I-D-E-R.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your 5 minutes begins now.
Okay. Hello, good evening. As Matthias noted, this building is the Stephen Garrettson Homestead, an important historic property in an historic neighborhood. It should be landmarked and restored to its original glory, not mutated with one wall intact. But I'm going to focus on something else for my remarks. This application contains numerous inaccuracies and mischaracterizations, which would and should render it null and void, even if it were to be approved by the commission. A few examples: 238 to 247th Street is zoned as a 4-unit building, not legally 5 units, as the application asserts in multiple places. This seems to purposely understate the true extent of its 150% unit expansion from 4 to 10 units. The application misrepresents the building as a 4-story, though tax records describe it as a 2-story dwelling with basement, and the applicant's own DMC survey describes it as a high 2-story frame dwelling. The application mischaracterizes the proposed front yard and rear yard setbacks as 5 feet and 30 feet respectively, but these figures do not align with the proposed drawings, where the front yard plus building depth exceeds 77 feet. Given a lot depth of 100 feet, this means that less than 23 feet would be available for the rear yard setback, which is significantly less than the minimum code requirement. Similarly, the application drawings visually minimize the true depth of the proposed building within a 100-foot lot. However, even if taken at face value, the drawings depict an addition whose bulk is decidedly out of line and inconsistent with the existing paradigm of the block, and which does not fall within the vernacular traditions of the neighborhood. I've read other HPC application decisions on rear additions, which are accepted when they align with other neighboring additions. This one does not. As Commissioner Gunther recognized, it would put a full height building in the midst of the block's backyards, disrespecting the neighbors and the donut. The buildings behind it on 8th Street are over 100 years old, long before the current zoning requirements. Furthermore, the proposed excavation along the property's sides, all the way to the neighboring row house's walls, and installation of paved walkways with multiple private tenant entrances along the east and west sides of the building, all visible from the public right-of-way, are decidedly inconsistent with the existing paradigm and development patterns of the area and would be intrusive to neighboring properties. Each of the above would cause an adverse effect on the character and integrity of this historic property and the Hamilton Park Historic District. And I do not believe they meet the historic design standards, including General Standard Number 1, requiring minimal alteration of the building structure or site and its environment. This proposal involves significant alteration to all of those, more than doubling the investment property from 4 to 10 units, expanding the back at full height to create a large apartment building on a street of single family and occasional 2 to 3 unit homes. Would it be acceptable or historically appropriate if everyone in the neighborhood started requesting the same? It would not. General Standard 2, requiring that the distinguishing original qualities or character of a building, structure, or site and its environment shall not be destroyed, removed, or altered. This proposed irreversible work, which the application calls a restoration, solely preserves the building's facade based on the 1937 tax photo. The original L at the back, which is not a later addition, would be removed. The position of walls and interior floor plans are changed, stairs removed, new entrances created, windows boarded up, and the whole back of the building reworked, the backyard significantly reduced, which would reduce light and space and change the character of other buildings' yards on the block. General Standard Number 6, in the event that replacement is necessary, the new material shall match the material being replaced. In one example of non-compliance, the sides and rear of the house are currently cedar shake siding, but the application proposes to replace it with clapboard. These are visible from the public right-of-way from east, west, and northerly directions. General Standard 9, when the replacements are made, exterior architectural elements shall be replaced with the style and finish of the period of significance of the building. I would argue that the period of significance of this 1840s homestead is not the period visible in the 1937 tax photos when it was already 100 years old and altered, which the proposed work seeks to preserve. And rear yard addition design standard number 6. The existing rear facade will not be removed from the entire width of the building. The proposal
30
removes.
seconds.
Okay. All of these are visible from the public right of way. And lastly, the proposed work does not comply with the historic design regulations and would require multiple variances, which certainly would impact the neighborhood. Upon review of the aforementioned issues and given the significant historic importance of the property, I ask you to apply the same.
Please slow down.
Sorry, the same level of strict scrutiny that other applications on 7th Street have been subjected to. The proposed expansion of this homestead from a 4-unit, 4-bedroom house to a 10-unit, 16-bedroom apartment building would be historically inaccurate and diminish our block and neighborhood. The out-of-town investors knew they were buying a historic property.
I'm sorry, your time is completed. If you could just wrap it up.
Yes,
Thank
they knew they were buying a historic property in a historic district, and this profit-driven expansion should be denied. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next I see Micah.
Good evening.
Raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Could you state and spell your full name for the record?
My name is Micah, M-I-C-A-H, Weese, W-E-E-S-E.
Okay, your 5 minutes begins now.
Good evening. My name is Micah. I'm a resident of the Journal Square neighborhood at 68 Van Ray Penn Street. And I just wanted to voice support for the project, specifically the backyard addition, which would bring the project up to 10 units of housing. I just want to object to the line of questioning and some of the public comments that have described the backyard addition as some sort of unhistoric intrusion. I completely respect the commissioners and the community's commitment to historical veracity. And I even understand some of the concerns about the facade and street trees. I just want to say that to deny any additional units of housing on this site in one of the most expensive housing markets in the country and in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city would just be a disservice to the public and the community at large. I understand that this building was of some significance in 1830, but the housing market in 2023 is not what it was in 1830. And it might require some flexibility on the part of the commission and the community to re-densify some of these neighborhoods. It's just, if we can't build just modest backyard additions in 2023, there's no way we're going to be able to solve this housing crisis. And we have a civic obligation to kind of create historically sensitive ways of adding gentle density in areas such as this. Completely support whatever facade work needs to be done to bring this piece of housing in line with the commissioner's desires, but I just want this project to go ahead as a 10-unit project and think that would be a net benefit for the city.
Great, thank you. All right, next up is Chris Perez.
Hey, Chris, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, and just state and spell your full name.
Christopher Perez, CHRISTOPHER, PEREZ.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Perez. I'm the president of the Jersey City Landmarks Conservancy, and I appreciate everyone being participating in this call tonight to discuss this matter. The board of the Landmarks Conservancy reviewed the plans, and we have a couple of concerns, and I appreciate that some of the commissioners and public have stated them as well. We do believe that it would be in the best case scenario to try to restore the building back to its date of significance, which would be, the early 1800s, mid 1800s. I have some concerns with the sides of the building and the addition. The site is a unique opportunity where we get vantage points of the sides of the structure, right? And the rear addition is going to square off the roof line in the back, which you can see from the street. And it gives you a sense of this is an old home. This could be a farm home. The way that there's the gabling on the front and the rear that you can see from both sides, the addition is going to square that off. And I think that's going to have a real effect on the look and feel of the building when you're walking past it and looking down the side yard lines. Also, the windows on the side, I think, are also important. There's some windows on the upper floor, the attic, which I believe the project is slated to remove. I think those are very important as well because they can be seen from the street point of view. I'm also concerned about the front facade treatment and thinking that there should be some investigating done as to what is a better restorative outcome. The little extensions at the top corners of the front facade and in the center, are probably 1920s modifications that don't seem to fit the look and feel of an 1840s home. So those are some of the concerns that we have. Also, the size of the rear addition seems to be a bit too much. I think I've pretty much gone over those concerns. As the other gentleman had explained, the grading of the street was much different, and that's why this structure seems so tall. The dirt probably came up higher to the top of the basement level. But those are my concerns, and I thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank
All
you.
right. Next up, we have Robert Burns. Robert, you should be able to unmute yourself. There we go. Perfect. Oh, you just have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Would you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And if you can state and spell your full name for the record?
My name is Robert Burns, B-U-R-N-S.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Your 5 minutes begins now.
Great. Thanks very much. Good evening, everyone, and thanks very much for your time tonight. My name is Robert Burns. I live at 236.5 7th Street with my wife and 2 young children. And just for reference, this is the property immediately adjacent to the east side of the subject property. You heard earlier tonight from Matthias and Diane, who are the owners of the property immediately to the west side of the subject property. This commission's work over the years is a big reason, perhaps the biggest reason, why we chose to build this house on this block 5 years ago. The block on 7th Street between Jersey and Erie is, in my not entirely objective view, one of the true gems of this community. And that's thanks to the work of this commission over the years. The block is a showplace for a wide variety of 19th century architectural styles. And of course, the property we're here discussing tonight isn't just any house on the block. It happens to be, as you've seen, the oldest house in the neighborhood and an example of a much earlier architectural style than you can find pretty much anywhere else in the neighborhood. I would urge the commission to take its time and be careful here with a project like this that proposes radical changes of this nature to a property of this age and significance. I'll try not to repeat the comments made by other public commenters, but I will note that the first point that I have, and it probably identifies me as something of an innocent in the rough and tumble world of real estate development, is that I am disappointed by the complete lack of any prior community consultation on what is a very major project with very major impacts. We just happened to hear in the last few days, and almost accidentally, that this major work was being proposed. And that despite the fact that the proposal here would leave in effect only the front facade of this property in place and essentially blast out and replace the rest with a giant box. And despite the fact that if this proposal were approved, we ourselves and my family would find our backyard, which is already about 6 feet below the backyard of the subject property, blocked out entirely by a 4-story wall extending nearly to the rear property line. There was no conversation, no discussion, no notice, nothing. The second point that I'll make, I'm a lawyer by profession. I'm not an architect. I'm not a builder or a historian. The plans that we've seen tonight are mostly Greek today, and I put myself in your able hands to determine whether the railing is right or the nature of the windows. But when I did start looking at this a few days ago, I was relieved to learn that I really didn't need to have any particular technical expertise to see what's wrong here. And the general standards of the zoning of the Jersey City zoning code are well known to the members of this commission and have been recited by several of the other presenters here tonight. But they generally stand for the proposition that there should be only minimal alteration to the building structure or site and its environment. And they stand for the proposition that you need to respect the original qualities of the building structure and the site, and that even changes that have been made in a historical fashion over time themselves can attain the quality of a historically significant aspect of the building deserving of preservation. These are common sense principles to me, and in my view, the proposal here on the table blasts right past them. In my view, there's no respect given whatsoever for the original character of this building and its environment. The proposal tries to pretty up the front facade and essentially blasts away the rest. The unique aspects of this building, including the existing rear additions that have been in place for over 100 years, are replaced by a giant 4-story box. The historical nature of the building, which was first a 1-family home and then a small 4-unit building, is changed to a 10-unit building, wholly out of character for the block. And the site is entirely reconfigured to remove nearly all of the existing green space. Right now, there's an existing open donut between 7th and 8th, Jersey and Erie. But considering how far back the existing structures on 8th Street go southerly, this new addition would effectively close off the donut entirely. And there's no effort made in these proposals, none whatsoever, to talk about repair or ways in which the building's historical fabric can be respected while fixing the building. The assumption seems to be here that the only option is just to knock pretty much most of it down and start over again. But there's nothing here that's been provided to support that assumption, that there's very little worth saving here and very little that can be fixed. So I would ask the commission, I would urge the commission to consider this proposal carefully and to determine whether all of this stripping away of history and character is really necessary or appropriate here. We think it is not. Thanks very much to the commission for their time and attention tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next I see Diane Atwell. All right, Diane, you should, yeah, you're all good to go.
I didn't
Just to
see
be
you.
sworn in.
Would you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, and state and spell your full name.
Diane Atwell, D-I-A-N-E, Atwell, A-T-W-E-L-L.
Your 5 minutes starts now.
I'm on my AirPods and it's very strange to now be trying to talk to you. I could hear you so clearly. I want to first thank the commissioners present for their attention to all the speakers this evening. It's really refreshing to see interaction as you nod and respond to what we're saying. It means a lot to us as people who come forward. I am the vice president of the Hamilton Park Neighborhood Association and was made aware of this project just a couple of days ago. Listening to the testimony given and the speakers, particularly Mr. Johansson, the Hamilton Park Neighborhood Association has been a real stakeholder in this historic preservation district. We have worked very, very hard throughout the years to have reasonable development in the neighborhood, the expanded neighborhood of Hamilton Park. It is very clear to me after listening to Mr. Johansson's testimony that there is a reason for pause here, that the tax map key picture that might have been based on these elevations are not accurate, that there is a family home of significance underneath what we are currently seeing, and it needs to be explored. If this is truly one of the oldest houses in this neighborhood, I would want to preserve it, or at the very least, do more digging to find out what the significance of it could be. As of right now, we're hearing, or at least seeing on that one picture, that the rear addition that sticks out is not an addition. It looks like it was a one-story part of the house that was then expanded up on. And if that's the case, just knocking it down seems not the right thing to do. That taking a moment to kind of look at it and verify the information and give the architect a chance to go back and think about what he's doing seems prudent at this juncture. And I really hope that the commissioners will consider that. This home could be a gem in our neighborhood that we were not aware of. And I really think that the commission should take time for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I see Julia Russell next. I'm gonna go ahead and promote you. And just as a note to Jean from earlier, if you're still on, I don't see your hand raised if you still want to give public comment on this and join in the group. All right, Julia, you should be good to be sworn in.
Okay, would you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, and if you can state and spell your full name.
Sure. My name is Julia Russell, Julia, last name Russell.
Okay, Julia, your time begins now.
Great. Thank you very much. My name is Julia Russell, and my family, just me, my husband, and our 3 kids, live across the street from the property in question at 247 7th Street. I'd first like to thank the commission. We are very proud residents of this neighborhood. We've been in Jersey City for about 20 years, and we love the diversity of types of buildings and the sort of interesting features of the neighborhood, which I think is in large part thanks to the work that you all do and have done over the years in maintaining, I guess, and balancing the needs of a growing city with the preservation of the character of the neighborhoods and the way that the city has developed over time. I have to admit that I've always viewed this particular property on our street as sort of an eyesore. And so was sort of fascinated to learn actually that this was one of the oldest properties on the street, and to see the pictures that some of our neighbors were able to find that show, granted it's, you know, the back and the side of the house, but the picture that Matthias showed of the, I guess it was like a croquet match, that does appear to show, you know, a portion of the front porch that I forget exactly which commissioner mentioned, but, you know, does in fact appear to have a porch that went across the front and to look much more like what I would expect a farmhouse from the 1840s to look like. So I think what I'd like to say is primarily that we would ask that the commission encourage the property owners and the architects and all those involved to do more research and to find pictures like this one that would allow a reconstruction of this property, which appears to have great historical significance, to take advantage of the fact that we do have great resources, and to make this property into something that does convey the character of the original house that was on the premises, you know, the property as it is, in fact, by creating a facade that is more appropriate, as opposed to recreating the 1930s tax picture. I also would like to echo some of the comments of other neighbors about the size of the extension and the massing on the rear of the property, which, you know, we all know that there's tons of development in Jersey City and downtown, and appreciate the need for housing, but this area really is one, maybe 2 or 3 family homes, and creating a 10-family block of a building in the middle of this street that is mostly 1 or 2 family homes would be a big change. And I do think, I appreciate that, you know, they're not building out to the very edges of the side property, but you do see when you're walking down the street, you can see it from the sort of Google Maps picture that you can see down the sides of the house. You can see the space and the light that comes into the backyards along the edges of the house. And so building that back at a 4-story height all the way back, you know, close to the back property line would make a big difference, and you would in fact see that. So I think that these are all things to be considered. I recognize that the difference between 9 and 10 units isn't that significant in terms of the parking variance, but I will say that this is a neighborhood that in which it's already a nightmare to find parking, and most houses don't have the ability to create parking. So it's not a non-significant thing to those of us who are trying to live on the block. So going from 4 families to 10 seems out of proportion to the neighborhood, and the massing seems inappropriate for this block, and frankly for this structure that we can see in these historic photos to have been very similar to its current shape and size from back in the 1840s. So we thank you again for your consideration, and I'm looking forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up I see Gina.
Hello. Would you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And if you could state and spell your full name.
Yes, it's Gina, Jeana, Corker, Corker.
Great, your 5 minutes begins now.
I just want to express my concerns as a resident of the Hamilton Park neighborhood. With the increase in the number of units in this property, it is not just a quote modest backyard addition, as Micah referenced, but it's more than doubling the size of the structure. The lot coverage seems excessive, and the addition will be visible from the alleyways as well. I also want to express my disappointment in the proposed drawings of the facade of the building. It's not consistent with these early 1840s pictures that one of the earlier speakers referred to, and it seems like the neighbors have done more research on the facade than what the client's architect has done. I want to ask the commission to push for more research on the historical facade and also push back on the size of the addition. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Aaron Underwood.
Hi, could you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You just state and spell your name for the record, please.
My name is Aaron Underwood, AARONUNDERWOOD.
Okay, your 5 minutes begins now.
Okay, this won't take very long, but my name is Aaron Underwood, and I'm the president of the Hamilton Park Neighborhood Association. And I just wanted to point out that I too just very recently found out about this proposal. So it was a bit of a blindside, and I was very surprised to learn that there is a pre-Civil War building in the Hamilton Park neighborhood. And after listening to Mateus, I was also very surprised that he was able to locate what seems to be an accurate picture of this building when the applicants were not able to do so. So I just think that it's very important to do thorough research and take time to make sure that we're doing this right, because I feel like this is a great opportunity, and we don't have really many chances at great opportunities like this. So I think it's important that it's done right the first time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up I see Hugh. Hugh, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Do you hear me?
There you go.
Would you raise your right hand to be sworn?
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And if you can state and spell your full name.
It's Hugh Halestook, which is spelt HUGHHALES-TOOKE.
Great, your 5 minutes begins now.
I just thought that seeing the early photograph that Mr. Johansson presented suggests that the addition to the additions to the buildings are historic, at least as old as the photograph in the tax record, and so I would urge the commission to consider the value in preserving them and making sure that they weren't demolished if they are of historic age, and also the pattern of the windows in the side elevation that appeared in the old photograph that appear to be the same as the windows in the existing structure, that should be a consideration for historic preservation as well. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
I don't see any other hands raised, but we did have that Mr. Eagle who was promoted during open
Yes.
public comment. So I think maybe we should promote him. And
There we go. Yep. All right, Jean, I'm promoting you.
if there's anyone else who wishes to comment, if you can raise your hand now.
Am I correct that Jean remains under oath?
Yes.
Okay, Jean, your 5 minutes begins now then. If you would like to unmute yourself, I'll start it when you start talking.
Come on.
There you, oh, you just had it. There we go.
And then myself again. Thank you for whoever invited me back. You know, I didn't feel as though I didn't want to feel as though I was piling on. But basically the other public speakers pretty much presented exactly what I had wanted to raise. And I guess the thing that comes across to me is, one, there's a discussion of preservation and restoration, but really a 10 family apartment building on this block is unprecedented. And, you know, there's just no way around that. Aside from the concerns about parking and everything like that. The second thing that I wanted to reinforce from the other speakers is, you know, I only learned about this because someone dropped something, one of my neighbors dropped something in my mailbox. Otherwise would have been completely unaware of it. And this is a pretty significant event. And so I wish there had been additional advance notice. So that's all I really wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't see any additional hands raised. I asked for it, I think, when Jean came in. Oh, we have one more.
Okay. All right, Meg, I'm gonna go ahead and promote you. Meg, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yes. Now you're muted again.
Okay, thank you. I'm here.
All right, do you have the ability to turn on your camera?
I'm going to try. Just 1 second, please.
No, it's okay. All right, we can take your name, the spelling of your name, and Jonathan will be able to swear you in.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you state and spell your name for the record?
Megchen.
Thank you.
All right, your 5 minutes begins now.
Thank you. I'm a resident of Paulus Hook, and I'm always concerned that historic buildings be preserved in Jersey City, as it's very important to all of us neighbors who are living here. And if due diligence can be done to look deeper into the facade, to really probe it, as was suggested, I think it's extremely important. As far as the bulk in the back of the building, I think taking down an existing structure that is historic, it's important that should be looked into, because I think that would not be healthy for our ongoing historic preservation. And if the bulk is, if it's built too big at the detriment to the neighbors, I think that's a real issue. and an issue that we all face in all our historic neighborhoods. So please, thank you for looking into the facade more carefully. Hopefully the architect will go back and do due diligence. And I think the building could be a great asset to the neighborhood, and hopefully that the owners will want to do the right thing. But those issues, if the gentleman Mateus can find that picture, I would assume that there's probably more. So, and that would help define what the building could be. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. All right, if there are any other members of the public who would like to address the commission regarding this application, you have about 5 seconds to use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen.
Maggie, I see that there's one call-in listener now, so I don't know who that is, but it would be *9 if you want to raise your hand.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you.
That may be Mr. Gentile.
All right, well, staff sees no additional hands raised, so staff recommends a motion to close public comment.
Make a motion to close public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Chairman, if I could, Ken Poro again for the record. The nice thing about getting older and representing boards myself, I hear the comments loud and clear. I hear the public loud and clear. We are mindful of the issues, and I think there's some interesting points raised, especially if we had 9 units instead of 10, there's no parking variance. We have no rear yard setbacks. But again, I respect the comments of the public. I think it's unfair to say to the applicant, there's one picture on the other side. I would challenge the neighborhood also that if they have any photos or discover anything, there's no secret agenda here to hide anything. Please provide it to my office in Secaucus, Chazen Lamparello, or the board or whatever, and we will be mindful of that. We would like to have this application carried into your May meeting so we can address the issues that were raised. But candid to the public, we may come back and say after our due diligence, we are in the same place. But again, we are mindful, respectful, and want to do the right thing on transparency. Anthony, as an architect, and you've seen his work over and over again, going to his website, I venture to the public. He respects historic commission and historic buildings as much as anybody. Anthony, any concerns on your end?
Just a few comments, and I thank Mr. Johansson for finding these photos. If he's still here, if he can just bring it up, I just want to bring up a few points to the board. It seems like adjacent to the 2-story addition, there seemed to be a 1-story portion that has since been removed, I think, to the east on the rear addition. But more importantly, as the commission had brought up previously, is that yes, there looks to be a front porch, on the structure. However, the grading was certainly different at the time of that photograph, where a porch now would either be elevated, approximately 1 story in the air, or it would be kind of dropped towards grade, where you kind of wind up at a strange place of restoration where to actually place this porch. And then how it has impact on the immediate sidewalk and so forth. So, there's certainly a lot of work cut out for us on this, on the application. And we will certainly do our due diligence going forward. But there's some things that have to be considered, such as this kind of porch here in the front. Again, it's going to be difficult to kind of deal with.
So, Commissioner, to recoup, we'd ask respectfully that this matter be carried to your May meeting without additional notice to address the issues of the commission and the public. Thank you.
Yeah, Brian, you go first.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know you'll have to, the staff, you can comment on the timing in terms of May. I think you already indicated the May meeting is already packed, so I think that might.
Yeah, what I was going to interject and say is that the general practice of this board is actually just to carry to an unspecified meeting date, and we get you on the next available meeting that we have space on. So if you're comfortable with that, that is the preference of staff.
That's
And also
fine. Thank
before we
you.
table it, you know, after hearing quite a bit of public testimony, if there's any questions from commissioners or any comments, so that you can take that, you know, into consideration when you come back. So if there's any other questions from commissioners based on what we heard, I think, you know, the testimony was very interesting, and certainly the documentation from Mr. Johansson was quite interesting. Maybe some of the most interesting testimony I've seen. So that was really quite interesting. So thank you for doing that research. And Maggie, I think you have a copy of that, and you can provide it to the applicant as well. And if you know any other, if Mr. Johansson has any other documentation to provide it to Maggie, who can then forward it to the applicant. Corey, I see your hand was raised. No mistake.
Not anymore. You actually covered my point. I was going to suggest, I was enthralled with Mr. Johansson's presentation. I was going to suggest that the applicant gets a copy of those pictures for research purposes.
We'll ensure that happens.
I have some comments. So I would say that was some of the most interesting public comment we've heard, probably since there was that St. Peter's Prep demo application, and we had a neighbor who flew a drone over the property and saw that, you know, some of the gutters had been removed and et cetera. But not to beat a dead horse, but I do think this should be a cautionary tale for applicants not to try to run roughshod over your neighbors. And I would say it's not every day we see this level of public engagement, most of which has been vehemently opposed to this project. Looking at the project from a high level, I would say in my limited experience, we ordinarily allow applicants to sort of designate their target period for restoration. And ordinarily that 1938 period, based on the photographic evidence, normally that would be acceptable. But after having seen and heard from members of the public, we've learned that this property may have been of real significant historic importance. So I recognize that we can't hope to replicate or restore the building completely to its original status because it was located in a much more rural setting. But I'm hoping that the applicant can find an adaptation that preserves the original historic fabric and, to the extent possible, restores it to its original glory. Thanks.
All right, does anyone want to make a motion to carry the application?
Before we do that, if I could make one other comment.
Of course.
I was happy to see that the photographs that were presented on Mr. Johansson confirmed a lot of what Commissioner Amatuzzo suspected was the case on this property, particularly the porch, the roof line, the materials. And I urged the applicant to do a lot more research here and possibly recommend that they go to the neighborhood association to address the issues of a lot of the neighbors not even knowing that this project was about to happen. It is fairly large. There's a large increase in the use on the lot. It might go a long way to getting clear on what the neighborhood's concerns are. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
And one other comment that I had was, I think this is actually going to be a case where we actually need to see some investigation on the interior as well, to know when the additions date to know what the state of the interior is like on the building. I don't necessarily have a problem with an addition here, but I think you want to make the case that this building is also highly altered, and it's maybe some of the outline of the addition might remain. I think you want to make the case that it's been altered at the interior, and a lot of the rear of the building has been altered as well. So I think that's something that we should be documented as well in this case. And I also there was a couple things about parking and density, and just a reminder to the public as well that, I think 10 is allowed per 10 units is allowed as of right in this location based on the calculation and the size of the lot. And that variances are ultimately the zoning board. So if there is a variance, that is something that's a concern for the zoning board as well. And they'll have to take action on this application as well after, excuse me, after we do. So
Thank you.
All right. If there are no other comments, does anyone want to make a motion to carry the application?
Motion to carry.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Ken, I'll be in touch regarding scheduling.
Great, thank you. And thank you for your professionalism, board. We
Thank
heard you
you.
loud and clear. Thank you. And
Thank
the
you,
names.
everyone. Good
And the
evening now.
name. Okay, thank you.
All right, have a nice night, guys.
Okay, just in terms of timing, I mean, I think we're okay on a break, but how long do we anticipate the next item to take?
Well, it's a presentation with like a back and forth with the board. So I actually, Bridget, if it's kind of up to you. We usually break every 90 minutes. Would you prefer we break now or stretch that 90 minutes?
It depends how long you think the next application is going to go. Are we talking 15 minutes or 40?
I'd say probably closer to the 40.
Okay, we'll take a break.
Okay, all right. Guys, let's come back. We'll make it a shorter break. If we come back at 9:05.
Yeah.
9:06.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
So it's a 4-minute meeting or 4 minute.
Instead of fine, whatever.
5 minutes.
I'm sorry.
All right, it's 9:07. We'll come back. So I will read the next item, 9B. This is the Historic Preservation Master Plan element presentation. This is San Chavan, AICP PP, and Paul, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it, Cancilla, AICP PP, H2M Consulting, and Siri Olson of Easton Architects.
All right. Paul, San, and Siri, I'm in the process of giving you guys all sharing privileges, but in the meantime, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Yes, certainly. Good evening, and I promise
Sorry,
to
are
make
we
it.
swearing these?
No, we don't have to for this.
Sorry for the interruption.
All
No
good.
worries. No worries. Good evening, everyone. My name is San Chavan, and I am the project manager for this project. And I have a background in architecture and have been doing master plans, historic preservation plans for over 20 years. And I'm very happy and excited to be a part of this project. And I'm joined by Paul Cancilla and Siri Olson. Paul, would you like to introduce yourself and give a brief background? And I think everyone knows Siri, but nevertheless.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Yes, I've been with H2M Architects and Engineers. I work under Sam in the planning department. I have my professional planner's license, and I've worked on master plans, historic preservation elements of master plans throughout the state of New Jersey for numerous municipalities. So we're very excited to be able to do this project for Jersey City.
Siri, go ahead.
I'm Siri Olson, and I'm an associate at Easton Architects and head of the architectural history and preservation policy component of the office. And we are working with H2M and with the city as part of the team to help support the master planning efforts and the historic resource inventory update elements, and generally just supporting both the H2M and the city side teams throughout this project. So we're very excited to be part of it.
So we prepared a brief presentation, if I may just quickly share with you.
Absolutely. Maggie, you gave them
Yes, all three. You guys should be able to. There you go.
Okay, wonderful. So bear with me for a second. So we already introduced ourselves. So, I'll give you a brief overview of where we are at. We are between phase 2 and phase 3. So we had a field visit with Maggie and the whole Jersey City team, say 2 weeks ago. We've been reviewing the existing material series. Eastern Architects are working on the historic resource inventory. So this, this particular process, we're almost wrapping it up, so to speak. The next step is community engagement. And then after that, we'll have the plan development stage and the final stage of final plan and adoption. And as everyone knows, that we follow the guidelines as per the municipal land use law. So this is a function this gets adopted by the planning board. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a brief overview of the schedule. So we had a kickoff meeting in February, as I mentioned, we did our field visits. We have yet to conduct the department interviews, but we worked very extensively with Maggie and Dan and the whole group to prepare a survey. We have an online survey that the website should be up by the end of the month, if not sooner, or maybe the first week of May. Maggie was very courteous. It was wonderful working with the team. We vetted the questions and really put everything together, and very excited to launch that. Then in the end of April, as per our schedule, we have our historic preservation meeting, introducing ourselves. We want to get your feedback on and hear from you what your points are. And I don't want to put everyone on the spot right now, but of course, through Maggie, if you have any ideas or thoughts, even at a later date, it's perfectly fine. Our first, so the public input website has almost gotten finalized. We just have to put it up. So that's also as per schedule. We had anticipated 2 community workshop meetings as per what the city's RFP asked. And the first meeting is on May 31st. And the second one, we are planning some time in July and August. The public input will probably will have that on for 2 to 3 months. And then based on all that, our analysis, the public input will have like a draft ready, and we hope to meet again with the Historic Preservation Commission sometime in September while we're preparing the draft and final, and then the final planning board meeting to adopt the plan would be sometime in January. So as I mentioned, the community engagement. We have partnered with publicinput.com, which is we've worked with them on numerous master plans. We are their partner. And Paul, would you like to give a brief overview on this, please?
Yeah, sure. So publicinput.com is a really good website. We use them successfully for a number of years now. We've been able to really have a very interactive public engagement process, and we found that it's really helped to kind of elevate the amount of public engagement we've been able to get, particularly as more people become comfortable using online, and digital services. So really, but at the same time, we're really able to kind of compile all of the public input that we get, both in person as well as through the survey that Sam mentioned, and really have it as a database in this public input site, which really acts as the project website. We consistently update it to provide meeting updates, you know, if people want to be able to subscribe to the website, they can do so with their email, and then we, you know, any email blast goes out for meeting reminders, any important event milestones. All of that is really, we're able to locate that on this website so that it's really a one-stop shop for the project. And we really have had very great success using this in past projects.
Thanks, Paul. So as we mentioned, we'll have 2 community engagements. And then the next step would be to launch the public outreach with the survey, the May 31st workshop. We'll work with Maggie and the team to determine the date and location for the second workshop. And as I mentioned, the second meeting will be with the HPC. So thank you so much. And I will stop sharing now and really take questions or comments or, you know, your ideas.
Well, thank you for coming to speak with us. This is Commissioner Gucciardo. I was happy to hear that you would be presenting and getting ideas and thoughts that we have. I've been on the commission for a while, and there are certain things that I've seen over the years that maybe some additional design guidelines or regulations might help preserve the historic districts more successfully. You know, we are inundated with new infrastructure, whether it's electrical lines, cable, cell towers. All of these things are having an impact. We have providers coming to us to attach things to buildings. We have meters to deal with on the fronts of buildings. We have street safety that has changed the complexion of the public right-of-ways. And a lot of them are not necessarily taking into account historic districts and the impact that they have on historic districts. So I know all these things are necessary. Certainly don't want to interfere with providing services and safety to the public. But at the same time, I think these issues need to be looked at more carefully and how they should be treated in the historic district, because there's more and more need for infrastructure, and it definitely has a negative effect on the appearance. A pet peeve of mine for many years has been treatments of sidewalks. I know that we have guidelines for how cement sidewalks should be treated. There's a pattern that's part of our guidelines that I personally have never agreed with. It's a set of where the lines in the sidewalk, and we can talk about this at another point. I could present something through Maggie to you. There are cases where the predominant line between bluestone is really parallel to the street, but our guidelines show perpendicular lines for any cement that's added. And we get these wild interpretations. I think that rather than the sidewalk being something quiet and not impactful, it winds up being something that's quite different than the historic fabric. And I think those guidelines need to be looked at as well. So you can see a lot of my comments revolve around infrastructure and streetscape, sidewalks, and things of that nature. And I'll take your invitation to comment on other things as I think of them.
Thank you so much. And really, we are looking to get everyone's input, and not want to put you on the spot tonight, but yes, at a later date, definitely at you. Please send it over through Maggie.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners at this time?
No, kind of, well, a minor item. At the meeting that we had, I guess it was earlier this month, we talked about some items on our agenda, tabled cases, some of which have been on the agenda for an inordinate length of time, and we can't seem to get them off. So Maggie, I think you had indicated this would be the time to raise this issue, that maybe there needs to be some sort of update to the ordinance to give us a business process or a timeline for addressing these cases, so that we don't have them hanging around for what seems to be an indefinite period.
So, right. So at the master plan, what we do, it's a policy, as you all know, and I don't want to sound that as if I'm schooling, but really as per the MLUL, it's more like a policy guide. And if these are the things, that's what we need to know, like what is working and where you have difficulties. And that way we'll have specific recommendations, which will provide a framework for then to begin writing ordinances and get those adopted. So it is important to get that information. So please, if you have anything, please forward that to us through Maggie.
Thank you.
And I guess if we had talked about this, and I think we have a subcommittee on this, but the demolition ordinance certainly should be looked at as part of this citywide. And I guess, identifying any other historic districts, potential historic districts throughout the city as well.
And I think
landmarks at that.
And I think Siri, if you would like to talk about that aspect that Eastern Architects is taking care of.
Yeah, absolutely. So an important part of this early phase has been really kind of collating and gathering all of the existing information about identified and designated historic resources, and really bringing together kind of the information that exists and a lot of the recent work that has been done and pieces that have been identified. And what's really been valuable in our conversations with staff has been both the capital I formally identified potential resources that exist, and the other historic resources in areas of the city that are of interest are sort of lowercase I identified, that either staff or commission members have identified preservation concerns, or there have been neighborhood groups that have raised issues or intentions or interest in either designation or some other kind of proactive preservation work. So that gathering of geographic points and nodes and concentrations of potential resources, maybe for designation or for some other type of protection or assistance, incentive, kind of how that preservation could look in a couple different ways. That's an important part of this first step, is gathering that all together, and where we would absolutely welcome, your input on what you as the commission have seen as priorities and what you've kind of identified and seen as patterns. So, gathering that during this first step, and then what we'll also be really hoping to see come from the public survey and see some of the comments from public members who participate and say, this is an area that I think either has a preservation opportunity or has a preservation challenge. So that's something that we're really interested in hearing from you and from the public.
Yeah, throughout the identification process, at least on staff's end, we've really kind of honed through not just, what's formally identified. Of course, we know there are a number of districts that are formally identified, but we've also provided, just gone through all of the redevelopment plans that have preservation zones or some type of component like that isn't necessarily formally identified, but along the way, someone in planning said, hey, we might want to protect that regardless of if the state recognizes it as that. So we started there. There's also areas that we know could be part of a district in the future, or even just landmarked in the future. We've looked at buildings that we've denied for demolition. And also areas that we identified as part of some of the zoning corrections from the land use master plan. So all of those things are kind of coming together to influence how we're looking at kind of this. I'm blanking on the word. It's not a resurvey. Siri, help me out with what we're calling.
Yeah, an inventory.
Thank you. My brain's a little shot right now. Not a good week for this.
No, and it's a lot of information to categorize into an inventory, a database, a survey. It's sort of all of those pieces. So that's what we're really working through right now, and what's valuable exercise as part of a master planning
And I think
project.
And that's right. And based on that inventory, what we would do as the planners on this project is identify the historic district boundaries. We will even ascertain whether do you need transition districts, and based on all our findings, really put together recommendations that then can be implemented through through a zoning ordinance.
So to bring things full circle a bit, when we spoke at the top of the meeting about reservoir number 3, we talked about the fact that it's designated at this, I believe at the state and national level, but not at the local level. So is that something where we would consider designating it locally, and what might be the significance of doing so?
So would you like to answer that?
Sure. So I think as part of this project, sort of pursuing or recommending such a specific designation, or pursuing that specific designation is not quite the granular level that this master plan will be going for. It might be that the reservoir number 3 is really an identified site of interest and could be considered in a recommendation for potential properties for local designation. And so we could recommend that in amongst some other landmarks that could have also sort of have met that same level of interest and significance. So we can work that feedback into a recommendation, but formally pursuing a nomination at the local level, or designation at the local level, is not quite as far as a master planning document would go, or as our work would go in this, but we would be sort of setting the foundation work for that potential designation. And as San had mentioned, as a policy document, and as you brought up as well, the business protocol for moving applications forward, the master plan will also be able to address sort of the enforcement and the policy sides that can help if a nomination for reservoir number 3 were to be pursued individually.
Correct.
So that's a long rambling answer to your question about the site, but it is a very key, we know it's a key site in Jersey City that everyone is interested in, and there's a lot of effort on that site. So Sam, please go ahead. I didn't mean to.
Oh, no. I wanted you to answer the question because it's related to what you're doing. So basically, when Siri will, when Eastern Architects Group presents a list of all potential sites and in their inventory, that gets weaved into the recommendations is basically what I was trying to say. And that would provide the foundation for the city then to undertake initiatives to nominate or at a local level or pursue anything further, So right, that's what I was trying to sum up what you were saying, Siri.
And Robert, just to, continue looping back as part of that discussion, when I said that when projects that are like the Reservoir 3, when stuff like that goes to planning board or zoning board, how I can loop the HPC in through a referral review, I can also do that for things that are identified in the master plan. So when we say we're making recommendations for things to be included in master plan, is stuff that is eligible in one or identified, it also gives the HPC a little bit of leverage if things are for planning and go to planning and zoning board for review. And for what it's worth, that is actually one of the few ways that we use our existing element right now. Our existing preservation element is so old that it's not particularly usable. We haven't done we've done a couple re-examinations, mostly to add things to that inventory. We haven't done a comprehensive revision to the element since 2001. So when we're talking about making all of these changes, it's really not only because we need a working document, but it's because our existing document is not functional for the commission. I mean, I literally can't recall the last time we brought up the preservation element of the master plan at an HPC meeting, and that is honestly not great. So our end goal here really is to get a functional, usable document that helps guide what we do for the next 10, 15 years.
And to that point, I also wanted to let everyone know that typically when we write our master plans, we don't want a shelf document. I always like to call it a living and breathing document, because so every master plan of ours has an implementation matrix. So we set goals. And then we identify who the implementing party might be. And then whether it's a short term, so it is like whether it's an immediate goal, a short term, 3 to 5 years, long term, 5 to 10, we'll identify that. So even after this project is done, and for Maggie and the group and for the planning board and HPC, you'll have a checklist to go by. So that's also important.
Okay, so thank you. I mean, San, you mentioned something earlier about not being overly pedantic. I wouldn't have that concern, at least when you speak with me. I'm a lay person. I don't have any expertise in this field. So I'm trying to understand the impact of inventorying properties here. So is it that just by virtue of being inventoried in the master plan, it gives the HPC some degree of oversight of those properties?
So no. So what happens is when it gets inventoried, we have existing historic districts. What Siri is going to do is identify additional districts, additional properties. We'll put that in the master plan. It's like I mentioned, it's a policy guide. So what we are going to do then is set forth, and I'm just, we haven't gone that far ahead in this project. We just started in February, but I'll give you an example. In one of the towns I did an historic preservation plan, which was a part of the master plan. We identified, tied in the land use and the historic district. So we identified historic districts and then realized what the challenges were. Very different town, but based on that, gave in recommendations. They never had proper design guidelines, for example. So then our master plan recommendations spoke, that this certain property, this, from this street to that street, should be included in a part of the historic district. And then we also thought at that time for that particular area to have more like a transition, because right next to historic building was a former mansard, loan building, for example. So so basically what I'm trying to say is that based on what Siri prepares, that will give us a foundation to write recommendations. So our job would be then to prepare recommendations of what are the next steps that the city needs to take.
And sorry, Sarah, you go. It's okay.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'll just add to that of just because a property might get sort of inventoried or considered and recorded in this the sort of the database, almost like format for a master plan, it might get incorporated into a recommendation that San and Paul put together of a broader potential historic districts, for example. It doesn't necessarily mean that that property, so it gives, you know, a little bit more discussion potential for staff and for the commission, but that also doesn't mean that properties that weren't inventoried can't develop significance in the future. You know, it's not a hard and fast line in the way that a sole designation nomination would be. It's really providing an information database so that staff and the commission have more information to review properties that might come before you. And it's just a little bit more of a layered and comprehensive tool, as really sort of like a public information tool as its base level. So Maggie, please go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, and I was just going to add on to that. Just because something gets inventoried does not mean that the HPC automatically gets anything that comes with it. This is like, for example, if they're, I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, Fickens Warehouse, which is on Grand Street, historic building on the state register, on the National Register, identified in the master plan. There is currently a planning board application for that project. We're doing it at the staff level. It's not going to come to the HPC because that's the level of review it requires. Very rarely does stuff that is identified make it to the HPC. We only do that in cases where we think that the commission needs to review the application. Most of the time with those types of applications, if they're doing things per the guidelines, we just review it on the staff level, and we don't have any review over permits or anything like that. So we don't need to, if there's any concern about identifying stuff and them causing like a hardship on the owner, that doesn't really exist. It would all be part of the normal development application process. Okay. Are there any other questions, comments from commissioners? Like we had said, we put together a public survey that will be in addition to all of the meetings that we're going to have as well. The game plan is to have it out and available May 1st, guys.
Yeah, yes, that's the goal.
So we'll be sure to distribute it to all of you. Right now, the questions range from, basic demographic. I don't know, actually, I know I'd sent it around. I don't know if any of you took the land use element survey. It's similar in structure, demographic questions, positioning questions, visioning questions. Most things are on Sarah, what's the name of the scale?
The 5-point Likert scale.
Yeah. So with opportunities for open comment, there's a mapping exercise. We think we're going to get some really good information off of it that'll help base some of our recommendations.
And it's pretty user friendly. So right, that's one of the main things. So we try to make it interesting. So yes, so it'll be on by May 1st or any first week of May. Let's be conservative and say first week of May.
Great.
So that's it from our end. And if the board commissioners have any information, please, Maggie, forward everything to us, and we'll be happy to incorporate.
Great.
All right, thank you. And I think we can all say, as we know, it's long overdue as well. So we're happy to see it happening finally.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. We are very excited, as I mentioned in the beginning. So have a wonderful night.
All right. Thank you guys for sticking around. We appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right.
So next, we have all the tabled cases.
There's one we can make a motion on if we would like. So, all right, for table cases, Dan is working with French American Academy. So hopefully we'll see them soonish. For Sugartown, I have made repeated requests for this applicant to provide staff with some kind of update. At this point, they have been non-responsive, so I would so at this point, staff would consider that this case is inactive and would recommend a motion to dismiss without prejudice.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. All right, 11 Erie Street, actively working with their attorneys as well. 289 Pavonia. Hopefully I'll have some news on that one in May. Just as a heads up, 591 Montgomery Street will likely be carried to the June HPC meeting. Because they carry to a specific meeting, they will have to request that in writing from us. So that'll be sent to the commission as correspondence.
Is that based on their request or just because of space?
No, that's their request.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I left space for them, but they do not appear that they're gonna be ready for May 15th. Yeah, and then 218 Fifth Street is from the last meeting, so I don't have an update on that one.
And I did notice there is one less tabled case.
I know a lot of you were not here last meeting to see 148 Jewett finally exit the agenda.
Wow.
Whole new era.
I know.
And
It's all right.
eras.
I'm gonna be honest with you. No one even knew where those plans were. So there was like a dispute between the applicant whether we had them or the applicant had them. So for the best.
And speaking of new eras, we have
It's a
our
good transition.
election.
Make the nominations.
All right, yeah, but does the nominating committee wanna?
We do. Mr. Chairman, the nominations subcommittee respectfully submit the following slate for election to the HPC 23-24 board. Chairman, we nominate Robert Gordon. And for vice chair, we nominate Stephen Gucciardo and secretary Maggie O'Neill.
Do Robert and Stephen, do you accept those nominations?
Yes.
All right, I accept mine. Unless someone else wants to be secretary, but I don't think anyone else does.
Sarah? No.
Not a chance.
Sarah watches me basically. Sarah hears me more than watches me hit my head against my desk like 6 times a day for this. So. All right. With that, does anyone want to make a motion?
Motion.
I'll second.
All right. Who had the second?
I did.
All right. Roll call vote. Commissioner Amatuzzo.
Aye.
Commissioner Griga.
Aye.
Commissioner Gucciardo.
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther.
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis.
Aye.
Commissioner Gordon.
Aye.
Commissioner Sakong is absent. Commissioner Cronin is absent. For the last time, Vice Chair Sandkamp.
Aye.
And last time, Chairman Blazak.
Aye.
All right, there are 8 votes in favor, none against. Congrats, Robert and Stephen.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that is the end of the meeting. Thank you guys all for what was a much longer meeting than I expected.
Thank you, Maggie.
All right.
Yes.
So,
Thank you all.
Thank you, Maggie, for your hard work and congratulations on your upcoming event.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm
Big-
very
big
scatterbrained.
wedding
I'm very
day.
scatterbrained this meeting because I'm getting married
Yeah.
on Saturday and I'm sitting here
That's
trying
just
to make binders as I am.
Yeah.
Yeah,
congratulations.
Congrats and try to enjoy yourself.
I will. Once the binders are done, I'll enjoy myself then. The binders
Okay,
have to
good.
get done first.
Should
We
we,
wish you a beautiful wedding day, Maggie.
Thank you. I need
Yes,
some
absolutely. You
whatever
deserve nothing
whatever
but the
higher being
best.
you prescribe to. If you want to have them not make it rain, that would be lovely. Because right now that's the forecast, and I would prefer for that.
Well, a little rain in the morning is okay, but
Rain
we're
until-
going to pray to the rain, to sun gods to come
It
out.
can rain until 2 o'clock, and then that's when I need to stop. All right. On that note,
Make a motion.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Yeah.
it is
All in favor?
9:44 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Congrats, Maggie.
Congrats, Maggie.
Night, everyone.
Yeah.